Agni Yoga does not claim that the material things as such are evil. Nobody is asking you to give up all your possessions. The advice of Jesus to the rich young man to give his possessions to the poor and follow him is not being properly understood. No one becomes pure and holy by this alone, that he surrenders his possessions. One may wear bast shoes and still not be simple. Whoever clings to the goods so that they prevent him from leading a spiritual life must give them up in order to free himself. He, on the other hand, who possesses as if he owned nothing, can follow Christ with all his wealth. When Jesus saw a right attitude toward earthly treasures, he did not indicate a need to renounce them. He advised giving up possessions only when they were dragging down the spiritually weak ones. Hostility to earthly objects is the wrong way. They exist. They are a gift from God. They were manufactured with great effort, craftsmanship, and diligence. Time was when we said, give up everything. Now we go further and say, take everything, but do not consider it your own. Simple reasoning will show how impossible it is to take earthly things along with one. But they have been created with the participation of the Spirit. Hence, one should not despise them. We must not despise anything existing. Nothing that exists can be rejected. Would it not also be hypocritical to disapprove of things which, in fact, we need for our very survival? Is it not the madness of hypocrisy to give away everything and then to expect help from others? The point is not how much you have, but how you use that what you have. Not asceticism, but a wise use of things was ordered. A new formula is required instead of property. It is not the external circumstances, but the mental attitude that counts. Let us care for and honor the earthly things, whether they belong to us or to someone else. Let us use them according to their destination, not for ourselves, but for the construction of the new world, for the common good, for the progress of evolution. They do not belong to us. They were given to us from above for this higher purpose. So let us once again invoke the teacher and, in thought, pass this cumbersome load on to him, he will be able to transfer our mental gift still higher. That is how we can solve the problem of possession. Thus, the very designation disappears, and we remain the custodians of the property of the hierarchy. We are trustees. All of our belongings were entrusted to us by the hierarchy. We are accountable above for their proper utilization according to their purpose. We have to be ready to give them up at any time. In this way, we remove the personal involvement and deal with them only upon higher orders. He who is the best manager, who proves that he can selflessly use the things in the right way in favor of the common good, he will be installed by the community to possess them. It is good to understand that the possession of objects should be devoid of a feeling of property ownership. It is good to possess things in order to take care of them, and even to surround them with a benevolent aura, with the thought of passing them on to others. The manifestation of a creative hand dwells in a house whose occupants are without attachment to property, and that which was improved will carry joy further. The sign of the bestowing hand will be preserved continuously, and therein lies the justification of objects. Through this understanding is solved the most difficult problem. Possession, devoid of the sense of ownership, will open the path to all, without conventional inheritance. Who can improve shall possess. This concerns lands, forests, and waters. All technical achievements and various types of inventions are subject to the same principle. With this mental attitude, we can own property with dignity and happiness. Poverty and simplicity become an inner attitude of the new man, which may exist even among large entrusted possessions. In this sense, it is even desirable that spiritual people own houses, factories, and the like. This ensures that these goods are being used in accordance with the higher will, so that, for example, fair rents and working conditions are established. We see from the example of ownership how the coarse earthly conditions can be transfigured, raised to a higher level, and approximated to the subtle world, solely by changing our thinking. The decisive improvement does not take place in the external conditions, but in our consciousness, in the attitude which we are taking towards the outside world. People do not know how to deal with possessions because they do not wish to understand the meaning of the mental transfiguration of the earthly plane into the subtle. In the outside world, nothing changes. The owner remains the owner. Nevertheless, The rich man lives from one moment to the other in a different world, and his life gains a sense when he no longer considers himself as the owner, but as a trustee of his treasures, and makes use of them according to higher order and with a higher goal. The goal of the spiritual disciple will be, however, to detach himself more and more from worldly possessions in order to become free for the purely spiritual service. The maintenance and care for earthly property can be a burden and take such a claim on us that no room is left for spiritual striving. Avarice holds one back to the lower spheres. So we will keep in our possession only those few things which we absolutely need for our work. Everything else is an unnecessary burden on the steep path of ascent. As there is not enough room for all on a summit, whoever ascends it will likewise discover that the ascent cannot take place with a heavy load. Furthermore, there is no place on the peak for anything superfluous. The slopes are steep, and one should remember also that only the foot of the mountain is broad. At the base there is room for worldly things, but the summit is sharp-pointed and too small for all human possessions. The gradual detachment from possessions is not fanatical asceticism or obscure radicalism, but the consistent observance of the law of goal-fittedness, if you judge from the higher spiritual point of view. Buddha always advised the possession of as few objects as possible, in order not to devote too much time to them. The higher you climb, the less you will need. The less one needs, the more one approaches the gods who do not need anything. The holy within us that strives for realization is being killed every day. A major reason for this is work for money. Herein is contained the tragedy of our times. We find time without limit for all kinds of petty activities, but we do not find an hour for the most vital. The professional work has reached in our time a level that robs us of almost any possibility of repose, contemplation, connection with the Supreme, and selfless service. We have become the slaves of a ruthless business world. Ye are bought with a price, be not ye the servants of men. Let no earthly honor, no personal selfishness, no host of hell trample you underneath the feet of your soul's oppressors. You must be careful that you do not pollute the majesty of your soul by participating in unworthy proceedings, namely the selfish profiteering of others. Spirit, why then is thy fear so great before the derision of thy brothers? Why, in servility to the petty people, dost thou conceal the sacred seed bestowed upon thee? The tremendous amount of the current professional work is no longer justified by the little we really need. The new immortal man will live more modestly and do less paid work. True service is free. God's service is rendered for God's reward. In the new world, we need simple food, shelter, and clothing, nothing more. There, we shall certainly not aim, as today, at a prosperity according to the world's highest standard. In the future, people must be free from the need to devote attention to their physical needs. The principle of living in a community requires for each co-worker the provision of reasonable comfort, which will safeguard strength and labor. Can a yogi without penalty waste his time and energy? An immortal does not make the mistake to regard paid work as the purpose of his life. He withdraws step by step from the excessive demands of a materialistic world and earns his livelihood, if possible, by part-time work. He who is unable to escape the oppressive rhythm of the business world still clings too much to earthly matters, or is caught up in selfishness, vanity, greed, lust for power, or fear of the future.